All right, it's a new day, ready for assembly. So we got packages, we got an empty frame. Our battery will be packaged in box number 1, accessories and other pieces and parts. And then we've got our motor. All that's gonna fit right up in there, nice and easy. Battery, not gonna need that. We'll go ahead and open up the motor. So in this box, it's more than just the motor. A 6 amp standard charge. I'll set this aside, not gonna need it for a little while. Here is the motor. Got our motor, ends of the cable still wrapped up. No sprocket on there yet. Got all of our accessories. We'll just do a quick once over here. We've got chain. We've got the battery slide, 2 motor mount, chain breaker tool, chain guard, the main gas tank replacement, which houses the motor controller, the switch, the key, wiring harness is already hooked up there, rear sprocket. It's just a standard 49 tooth throttle, all the necessary hardware for motor mounts, key, front sprocket, some of the pins for the fenders. This is your battery guide pin, your swing arm bolt spacer, and we've got our screen mount included. We're gonna do the swing arm spacer here first. Got a 19 millimeter on a 1/2 inch drive, 14 millimeter on a 3/8 drive, and then our swing arm bolt. And we'll go ahead and grab our swing arm spacer. The spacer fits right in here. Pain in the ass to get lined up, just one person, but it's done. Now I'm going to move on to putting the motor mounts. First steps, motor mounts onto the motor. We'll be using that hardware. Just get them mounted on there, and then it'll just drop right into the frame pretty easily, although it'd be easier with the second person. We're going to grab this hardware kit, motor mounts, hardware kit. 13s across the board here for this step. Short ones first. Long ones will be going through these bolt locations. This is the top view of how it's got to look. This notch still lines up with that little hose. The one below it, just like that. So those guys are all mounted up now. Next step, mount it up in the frame using these 2 bolts here and through here. Spacers. We got to get this spacer in between there, loosen up this guy a little bit. Okay, just bolt in there just temporarily to line it up. We got that installed. That's sitting in there, kind of pinched in there. It's 13 millimeters. Our rainbow's thing here. It's be a lot easier with 2 people. Feed the wires through, kind of just to the other side, get them out of the way. Each bolt already has a washer and a nut on it. Leave one washer on one side, feed it through, put another washer on the other side, and then the nut. To wrap up this little section, we're going to put the battery slide in as well. Right here it goes. The longer side is over on the right side of the bike. That's a 6 millimeter. Now you can feel there's a little play in here. That's intentional. You might need to adjust for your battery because every frame is slightly different. So Basically, if you find something's weird or your battery's not going in right, you can adjust that. For now, I'm just going to press it down, kind of right in the center. Should be a good starting spot. I'm going to work on the airbox next. Basically, you've got some decisions to make. The rear fender is built into the airbox. So in general, we just leave it on, reinstall the airbox just as it originally was, but you do have to take off the carb boot, and then you can take out the air filter too. You don't have to put any of this back in if you don't mind losing the rear fender. It's kind of up to you, but what I'm gonna do here right now is take this off, reinstall the airbox, and then reconnect the shock as well. So you can use a Phillips to get this boot off. Take the air filter out first. All right, air filter out, and this bracket comes out. So with that, I think put this aside. Go ahead and get this rear shock reattached. The flappy arm can go back up into place. Our airbox is on, shock is reconnected, then our brake reservoir. And take that screw out. Use a rubber mallet, get it out of the way just a little bit. Just tap it until when you look in sideways at it, and that's mounted. Kind of just need this to be out of the way from this side profile. It's got to go just a little more. The battery comes really close to this whole profile. The side profile just barely is visible. We'll see if that hits the battery or not. If it does, we'll just tap it back a couple more hits. Back here at the foot brake, we have to adjust it slightly or else it interferes with this. So what you have to do is put on 1 or 2 of our included washers. They're just M8 washers, and you just bolt the brake pedal on just like normal. Use your needle nose pliers to get that spring back on. Yes. Sure, that's nice and snug. You can see there's clearance all along the motor. Everything operates just fine. All right, next we're going to install the main gas tank replacement. At this point, you got pretty dirty hands probably. It might be in your best interest to go wash your hands, clean them up before you start handling that stuff. You can kind of see how this is going to go. Just bolts on right there, fold down, bolt on at the top. Most bikes we come across, they're missing a lot of screws for the plastics. So we send you some extras and enough to replace all of the screws for the plastics there. So everything's uniform. These are all 10 millimeters. All right, next step is you gotta find some sort of a prop. For now, I'm just using the hammer. We need to connect these 3 phase wires. You can see they're color coded. They go onto the corresponding color locations here. 1 connector for the motor. That goes onto the wiring harness there. And then we got a couple other plugs to do. Now it's super easy to over tighten these, so you really gotta be careful. You're gonna have to do a pretty sharp 90, so you kinda gotta pre-bend these wires a little bit. So there's 1 routed in, makes a pretty sharp 90 down. And we'll worry about this slack here in a little bit. All 3 of the phase wires are connected, tightened up. Some of this slack here, which we still are going to figure out a home for that in a minute here. Don't worry about it quite yet. Next, we're going to put on the screen and the throttle. Those have wires that come down, come into the wiring harness. Throttle's super easy. Feeds right onto the bar. You're going to have to mess with the location of your brake, maybe slightly. Like right now, if I tighten it down there, you can't even operate the brake. So it needs a little bit of space. And running this wire just kind of up through here, and then get a zip tie somewhere up here. Zip tie it there, cut it nice and short so you can't cut yourself. One zip tie around here. It'll be covered up by the number plate. And we run it underneath, connect it to the wiring harness. There's 2 plugs. There's only 2 matching places, so can't mess that up. Put the screen on next. Get our screen, get some hardware. This spreads apart, goes over the main handlebar. Snaps into place. I'm going to want it like that. Now this you don't need super tight. I don't even get on the other short side of the Allen wrench. I just use the long side. The cable for the screen comes down, gets plugged in. That leaves one connector unused right here. That's our programming port. So this guy just dangles as is. And then obviously our main power here. Next steps are going to be kind of packaging the wires nicely in there. And then we're going to work on the chain. So the whole rear wheel off, change the sprocket out, put on the front sprocket, cut a new chain, put that on. Pretty much everything goes back together, plastics, and we're just about done. I'll get the wires kind of nicely zip tied out of the way. We're going to have the main power come out on the right side of the bike. For the wiring harness, you're going to have to kind of fold it on itself just a little bit. So the phase wires actually need to go in kind of an upward direction. As this comes down, these phase wires kind of get nicely tucked upward. And this comes down all the way to there. So that's about where it stops. This wiring harness, we're going to have to mess with it a little bit. Zip tie some of this stuff up. And then this just ends up dangling right here. That's perfect right where it is. Make sure you can turn the handlebars all the way. Cut anything, stretch anything. Yeah, we're looking good. Basically, I just zip tied one here, one here. Your experience may vary. You might want another one up top or something, but I'm gonna go ahead and snip those with a razor. Next, we're gonna put in the pin for the battery. Okay, so we got our pin and the screw. This is the battery pin. So the pin goes in from the other side through the bottom hole, and your screw goes on this side. Now we're not going to fully tighten it yet. Kind of like this. It's still loose enough to where you can rotate. I'm going to pull this out for right now and just set that aside. And then I'm going to slide the battery in and make sure all is well there. This stays a little bit loose until you know that you're in the right place, and that block can move around just slightly. The idea is that you can use the channel, sit it down, get it started on the edge, then slide it in. Slid all the way in. You go till this block bottoms out on the frame, put in this pin. Now if it doesn't go in, that means you just gotta rotate the pin a little bit, and I can see that it's off. Just put my adjustable line wrench. It's like a 6mm. Just kind of rotate this till the pin goes in. So I got it rotated to where the pin goes in nice and freely. Lock it in there. Then we do have to tighten the other side. pin's still loose. Check and make sure that this can still slide in and out. Now, if it couldn't, you've got some other adjustability. If it happens where when you tighten down the screw for this one on the back side, it might kind of shift the battery slightly in a way that makes it kind of pinched, and then you can't slide the thing out. So if that happens, you're going to have to adjust some of these down here. This is the best place to start. You loosen this one, loosen it on the other side, and then you can move this battery guide rail around just a hair to get it to where your battery is free and floats in and out pretty easily. You can put some lubrication on this bottom and in the rail to make it slide on and off easier. You can do the same on the pin. It makes hot swapping real easy. So now we can hook up the main tower here. I'm going to get this rear axle off. 17 and 19 millimeter. Good time to do a little brake job here. These are all right for now, I think. I'm just going to take off these 4. So this is a 52 tooth. We're going to a 49 tooth. This is all in an effort to tone the torque down just a little bit. Okay, next we're going to put on the front sprocket. Sprocket goes on first, and then the little key slides onto the spline, and then there's a slot in the shaft, and so then you rotate it. Got our Loctite, and just a little dab. So you can just get like a wrench or something, wedge it in. There's a little play that's supposed to be there. We're gonna get down to adjusting these chain tensioners here. I'm gonna go ahead and crank these in, loosen the nut. Got a little bit of adjustment to go in and a lot of bit of adjustment to go out. I'm going to do the exact same to the other side now. I think I've got it just about where I want it. So this black on the other side. So now we got the axle loosely back in. It's free in there. You're going to want to push it all the way forward and see where these marks come out to. So you want the location of the mark line up at the back of this or line up with that little tick. You want it to be the exact same on both sides. To do the adjustments, take a 10 and a 12, loosen up on that nut, and then you can bring this other one in. Got the exact same over there. Next up is going to be installing the chain. We've got the chain in our kit, chain breaker, gloved up. What you have to do is decide which of these links, which one do you want removed and replaced by key link. Start by putting up this clamp, put it on there, and then start tightening this down. If anything, you want to leave it a little bit long. You'll see it's just forcing the pin through the other side. And then you move on to the next one on the same linkage. We got a little extra, half a link extra. What I'm gonna have to do is I'll put in the key, then we're gonna have to tighten up the chain a little bit with the adjuster. Key through from the inside of the chain. We got a saggy chain. Loosen this guy up a little bit. Back these out a consistent amount on both sides and get it nice and tight. Now you just got to back out the jacking screw. We're going to install the guard. So we're going to be removing 1, 2, 3. And get up in place. We left off having just put the chain cover on, got all the new hardware in. This one we already have the battery installed. So really the only steps that we're missing that we needed to show on the last time was putting on the plastics and firing it up. And you'll see that there's no screen on this one. I'm just using it as an example because it's together. These are aftermarket plastics, but the way they attach is all the same as it originally was. You can reuse the hardware if you want, but we provide enough of these gold flange head screws to replace everything, so everything's standard. This side is pretty much just the same as factory, except you put in 2 bolts during assembly to hold the gas tank up for connecting the wires. You're gonna have to take those screws out and then feed them through the plastics and then through the sheet metal and into that bolt hole. And then this screw up here just goes straight into the threads on the sheet metal. Rear fairings are all original mounting locations, same as the rear fender. On this side, it is a little bit more. On this side, there's a few more things you need to know. We have this quick release pin on this side that allows you to pop this open in order to swap the battery out. There's the option for just using a screw here. If you don't ever take your battery out, I just recommend putting a screw in here instead. Down here, it's the same as on the other side. Screw going through the plastic and then the sheet metal. So the operation of this, you just fold that down, push that in, it clicks. To charge the battery, we've got this charge port down here. The operation, you've probably seen in other videos. You turn the main power cutoff switch on, flip the key, and it's ready to go. This is a mechanical disconnect switch, so this physically disconnects the battery from all the electronics in the bike. So if you're done riding for the season, or realistically overnight, I would recommend just flip that switch off. But if you're going to be riding all day, you can just leave it on if you want and just use the key to turn it on and off. The power consumption when it's in this standby position with the key off is very minimal, but the screen will be on as long as this is on.